Captain Jae-min Kim pulled his salvage suit tighter as he floated through the twisted metal wreckage. The asteroid field around Kepler 442b held secrets from the old wars. Most salvagers avoided this sector. Too many ghost stories. Too many rumors about the things that happened here 300 years ago. His scanner beeped softly. Metal signature ahead, buried deep in the largest asteroid chunk. Jae-min pushed forward with his thrusters, careful not to move too fast. The debris here could cut through ship hulls like paper. The metal turned out to be part of an old vessel. Not like anything Jae-min had seen before. The hull plating was different. Stronger. The design looked almost primitive compared to modern ships. But something about it seemed more honest. More real. He cut through the outer hull with his plasma torch. The metal resisted longer than it should have. Whatever alloy this was, the builders had made it to last. Inside, his helmet lights showed corridors filled with frozen air and floating debris. Most of the ship was ruined. Blast damage covered the walls. Signs of a desperate fight. But deep in what looked like a medical bay, Jae-min found something that made him stop breathing. A cryopod, still active after all these centuries. The pod hummed with quiet power. Its systems showed green across the board. Someone was alive inside. The nameplate on the pod was written in symbols Jae-min recognized but had never seen used. Ancient Earth script. The language of the humans. Dr. Elena Vasquez, it read. Jae-min's hands shook as he read the name. Humans were stories now. Legends used to scare children into behaving. The monsters who brought chaos to the galaxy before the Dominion Coalition brought order. Everyone knew they were all dead. Everyone knew the galaxy was better off without them. But here was proof that at least one had survived. Jae-min stared at the pod for a long time. He should report this to the authorities. The Dominion paid well for artifacts from the old wars. They paid even better for anything related to the humans. Instead, he activated the pod's revival sequence. The thaw took 6 hours. Jae-min waited on his ship, watching through the pod's external cameras as centuries of ice melted away. When the lid finally opened, a woman sat up slowly, coughing and gasping. She had dark skin and black hair streaked with early gray. Her eyes were brown and alert, taking in everything around her with the careful attention of someone used to danger. She looked exactly like a human from the old records. Where? She started, then stopped to cough again. Her voice was rough from the long sleep. Where am I? Where am I? Jae-min had prepared for this moment, but now that it was here, he didn't know what to say. How do you tell someone that their entire species is supposed to be extinct? You're safe, he said finally. I'm Jae-min. I found your pod in the wreckage. Elena looked around the medical bay, taking in the blast damage and twisted metal. How long? She asked. How long was I under? The date stamp on your pod says you went under in 2387. It's 2687 now. 300 years. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, something had changed. The careful attention was still there, but now it was mixed with something harder, something that had learned to expect the worst. The coalition? She asked. Did they win? Jae-min nodded. The Dominion Coalition controls most of the galaxy now. They brought peace after the human wars ended. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Peace. Is that what they call it? The humans lost, Jae-min said gently. I'm sorry. Your species. They're all gone. Elena studied his face. Jae-min was Altarian, with the blue-tinted skin and large eyes of his people. But there was something in his expression that surprised her. Sadness. Maybe even guilt. All gone, Elena repeated. How convenient for the Dominion. She stood up carefully, testing her legs after the long sleep. The medical bay's emergency supplies were still good. She found a water bottle and drank slowly, thinking, Tell me about this piece, she said finally. Jaemin hesitated. The galaxy is organized now. Everyone has their place. The Dominion keeps order. And your people? The Altarians? We serve the Dominion. We always have. Elena looked at him with those sharp brown eyes. No, you haven't. I remember your people. I remember what you were like before. Something in her voice made Jaemin step back. Not fear exactly, but recognition. Like seeing a predator that had been thought extinct. The Altarians were free thinkers, Elena continued. Artists and philosophers. You questioned everything. You never served anyone. That's not. Jaemin started, then stopped. Because deep down, in the parts of his memory he tried not to visit, he knew she was right. There were old stories, old songs that his grandmother used to sing when the authorities weren't listening. Stories about what his people had been like before the order came. Elena moved closer to him. She was smaller than most Altarians, but something about her presence filled the room. They tell you humans were monsters, she said. Jaemin nodded. What if I told you that was a lie? The words hung in the air between them. Jaemin wanted to deny it. Everything he had learned, everything his society taught, said that humans were the great threat that had to be eliminated for peace to exist. But looking at Elena, he couldn't see a monster. He saw someone tired and sad and alone. Someone who had lost everything and was still trying to understand what remained. What happened here? Elena asked, looking around at the destroyed ship. What really happened to my people? Jaemin didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the stories his grandmother had told him. Stories about humans who had died protecting Altarian colonies from Dominion harvest fleets. Stories that were forbidden now. Stories that were slowly being forgotten. I don't know, he said finally. But I think maybe it's time someone found out. Elena smiled for the first time since waking up. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was determined. It was the smile of someone who had work to do. Yes, she said. I think it is. Elena spent her first week awake learning about the galaxy she had inherited. Jaemin brought her data tablets and news feeds, watching nervously as she absorbed 3 centuries of history. The story they told was simple and neat. Too neat. The humans had been a violent species that spread chaos wherever they went. They started wars. They disrupted trade. They encouraged rebellion among peaceful species. Finally, the 5 great powers of the galaxy had joined together as the Dominion Coalition to restore order. The human wars had lasted 50 years and ended with the complete elimination of the threat. Convenient how they were so dangerous that none could be left alive, Elena said, setting down the latest tablet. Even children. Even scientists. Jaemin shifted uncomfortably. The records say humans were too unpredictable, that even their children would grow up to cause problems. And you believe that? The question hung between them. Jaemin had been asking himself the same thing for days. Elena didn't seem unpredictable. She seemed careful and thoughtful. She asked good questions and listened to the answers. I want to show you something, Jaemin said finally. He led her to his ship's communication array. With a few keystrokes, he opened a heavily encrypted channel. Static filled the speakers for a moment, then cleared. Salvage vessel Prosperity, this is Keth. Go ahead. It's Jaemin. I have someone here you need to meet. The voice on the other end changed tone. Is the channel secure? As secure as it gets. Stand by. 20 minutes later, another ship docked with theirs. The airlock cycled, and a figure in environmental gear stepped through. When the helmet came off, Elena found herself looking at something she had never seen before. The Zephyrian was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to shift color slightly in the light. 4 arms moved with natural grace. But what struck Elena most were the scars. ritual scars that covered the alien's face and visible skin in complex patterns. "I am Keth of the Deep Current," the Zephyrian said in accented standard. "Jamin tells me you are human." Elena nodded. "Dr. Elena Vasquez, though I suppose my credentials don't mean much anymore." Keth studied her carefully. "You are smaller than the stories said." "What stories?" Instead of answering directly, Keth touched one of the scars on his face. "These marks tell the history of my family line. This one speaks of my great-grandfather, who fought beside humans in the Battle of Proxima Gate." Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. "That battle was 300 years ago, during the wars." "Yes, but not the war they teach about in the schools." Keth activated a portable hologram projector. Images filled the air between them. Ships locked in combat. But the formations were wrong. Elena had studied those battles in her time. These weren't records of humans fighting against the other species. They were records of humans fighting alongside them. "The Dominion has rewritten history," Keth said. "They claim humans were aggressors who attacked peaceful worlds. But my people remember differently. We remember humans who died protecting our colonies when the Dominion came to harvest our young for their labor camps." Elena stared at the images. She recognized some of the human ship designs. Colony defense vessels. Medical ships. Evacuation transports. "How many of your people remember?" she asked. "Enough." "The Dominion tried to erase our warrior traditions, claiming they were corrupted by human influence. But some families kept the scars hidden. Some stories survived." Jamin was looking between them with growing understanding. "The songs my grandmother sang. She said they were old Altarian folk tales. But some of them mentioned humans helping during the time of burning skies." "The Harvest Wars," Elena said quietly. "We called them the Harvest Wars because the Dominion was collecting sentient beings for forced labor." "How many species did they take?" 17 that we know of," Keth said. "Most are listed as extinct now. But some of us survive in hidden places. The Dominion finds it useful to have populations that remember nothing but service." Elena felt anger building in her chest. Not the hot fury of combat, but the cold anger of someone who understood the true scope of a crime. The Dominion hadn't just killed her people. They had rewritten history to make themselves the heroes. "I need to see the other survivors," she said. "It's dangerous," Keth warned. "If the Dominion learns you exist. They already killed my species once for helping people like you. I won't dishonor that sacrifice by hiding." Over the next month, Keth and Jamin smuggled Elena through the underground networks that connected the galaxy's forgotten people. Each group had their own story. But the pattern was always the same. The Dominion would arrive with offers of protection and trade. When a species refused to accept their terms, economic pressure would follow. Then, blockades. Then harvest fleets that took children and young adults to work in the factories and mines of the Dominion core worlds. And in each story, humans appeared at the darkest moments. Not as conquerors, but as defenders. Human ships that broke blockades to deliver food and medicine. Human doctors who treated refugees in hidden camps. Human engineers who shared defensive technologies freely, asking for nothing in return. We were never perfect. Elena told a gathering of Altarian refugees in the deep caves of Titan 7. Humans made mistakes. We argued among ourselves. We were loud and stubborn and sometimes stupid. An elderly Altarian raised her hand. "The authorities say humans were chaotic, that they disrupted the natural order." Elena smiled sadly. "They're right about that. We did disrupt the natural order, because the natural order was that the strong take from the weak, and the weak serve or die. We thought that was wrong." She activated her own hologram projector, showing images she had recovered from her ship's damaged memory banks. Humans working alongside dozens of different species, building schools, establishing trade routes that benefited everyone equally, sharing technology and knowledge. "This is what we were," she said. This is what they killed us for. The gathering fell silent. Then, the elderly Altarian stood up slowly. My grandmother sang songs about the humans who died for us, she said. I thought they were just stories to make children brave. But you're real. Others began to speak up. Stories that had been hidden for generations. Memories that families had kept alive despite centuries of propaganda. The picture that emerged was clear. Humans hadn't been the aggressors in the wars. They had been the ones who refused to let genocide happen quietly. Elena felt the weight of that knowledge. Her people were gone. But their legacy lived on in the hidden corners of the galaxy, in the species that remembered kindness in their darkest hours, in the children whose ancestors had been saved by humans who never lived to see them grow up. What do we do now? Jamin asked as they left the gathering. Elena looked out at the stars through the ship's viewport. Somewhere out there, the Dominion continued their rule, continued their lies, continued their crimes against anyone too weak to resist. Now, she said, we remind the galaxy what humans were really like. The first broadcast went out from a hidden transmitter on the edge of the Vega system. Elena sat in front of a simple camera, her hands folded in her lap, speaking directly to anyone who would listen. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, she began. I am human. I know you have been told that my people were monsters who brought chaos to the galaxy. I am here to tell you the truth. The message lasted 10 minutes. Elena spoke simply and clearly, telling the real story of the Harvest Wars. She showed documents recovered from her ship. She named Dominion officials who had ordered the killing of civilians. She listed colonies that had been wiped out not for rebellion, but for refusing to hand over their children. Within hours, the Dominion's security forces were jamming the transmission and hunting for its source. But Keth's network had prepared for this. The message was rebroadcast from dozens of hidden transmitters across the galaxy. By the time the authorities shut down one source, 10 more had sprung up. The response was immediate and dangerous. Elena watched the news feeds from their hidden base on a dead moon in the Arcturus system. Dominion forces were cracking down hard on any system where the broadcast had been received. Mass arrests, increased surveillance, propaganda campaigns warning of human sympathizers and terrorist cells. They're scared, Keth observed. This is not the response of a confident government. Elena nodded, but her attention was on something else. Hidden among the reports of crackdowns were smaller stories. A work stoppage at a mining facility on Kepler 186F, protests on Gliese 667C, the resignation of several Dominion regional governors. It's working, she said quietly. The second broadcast came 2 weeks later. This time, Elena wasn't alone. Keth sat beside her, along with Jamin and representatives from 6 other species. They took turns telling their stories. Families separated by Dominion labor conscription. Cultures systematically destroyed. Children taken from their parents and never seen again. The Dominion tells you they brought peace, Elena said at the end of the broadcast. Ask yourself, what kind of peace requires erasing entire cultures? What kind of order demands that families be broken apart? What kind of government is so afraid of the truth that they must rewrite history? This time the response was stronger. Entire sectors experienced communication blackouts as the Dominion tried to prevent the message from spreading. But the damage was already done. The broadcast had reached military units, trade guilds, even some Dominion government facilities. Reports began filtering back through the underground network. On Tau Ceti Prime, a group of Altarian historians had published ancient documents that supported Elena's claims. On Wolf 359, dock workers had refused to load a ship bound for the core worlds, claiming it was carrying forced laborers. But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. Elena was reviewing intelligence reports when Keth burst into the command center, his 4 arms moving in the gestures his people used to express extreme excitement. We have a problem, he said. A good problem, but still a problem. He activated the main hologram display. A star chart appeared, showing the outer rim territories. Red dots marked dozens of locations. What are these? Elena asked. Ships, Jamin said, his voice barely above a whisper. Human ships. Elena stared at the display. That's impossible. Apparently not. They started appearing after your second broadcast. Old colony ships, deep space research vessels, even some military craft that everyone thought were destroyed. They've been hiding for 300 years. The first ship to make contact was the generation vessel New Horizon. It had been carrying colonists to establish a new world when the wars began. Instead of completing their mission, they had fled to the dark spaces between stars and waited. Captain Sarah Chen spoke to Elena through an encrypted channel, her weathered face showing the strain of 3 centuries in hiding. We've been listening to Dominion transmissions all this time, Chen explained, waiting for a sign that it was safe to reveal ourselves. When we heard your broadcast, we knew the time had come. How many ships? Elena asked. 47 that we can confirm. Maybe more. Some went so deep into hiding that even we lost contact. Elena felt something she hadn't experienced since waking up from cryosleep. Hope. She wasn't alone. Her people hadn't been completely destroyed. They had endured. What's your status? How many survivors? About 30,000 spread across all the ships. We've maintained our technology, our knowledge, our traditions. We've been waiting for the day we could come home. Over the next month, the hidden human fleet began to emerge from the shadows. They were careful, revealing themselves only to trusted contacts in the Resistance network. But their presence changed everything. The ships carried more than just survivors. They held the complete records of human civilization, scientific databases, historical archives, cultural works that the Dominion had claimed never existed. Most importantly, they carried proof. Elena stood in the communication center of the New Horizon, surrounded by evidence that would shatter 3 centuries of lies. Video records of Dominion harvest fleets attacking civilian populations. Communications between Dominion officials planning the systematic extermination of uncooperative species. Medical records showing the deliberate spread of diseases to weaken resistance. This changes everything, she said to the assembled ship captains. With this evidence, we can expose the truth. Captain Chen nodded grimly. The question is whether anyone will listen. The Dominion has had 300 years to make their lies seem like facts. They'll listen, Keth said from across the room. My people are already asking questions. The Altarians are demanding access to their historical archives. Even some Dominion client species are starting to wonder why they've never been allowed to research their own past. Elena activated the hologram display, showing the latest intelligence reports. The galaxy was stirring. Protests were spreading. Work slowdowns were affecting production across multiple sectors. Most significantly, several minor Dominion officials had defected, bringing with them documents that confirmed what the humans had been saying. We have momentum, Elena said. But the Dominion won't stand still for this. They're going to hit back. Hard. She was right. The response came within days. The Dominion declared a state of emergency across all controlled systems. Military fleets were dispatched to restore order. Any species showing signs of unrest would face immediate intervention. But something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking the resistance, the crackdowns made it stronger. Images of Dominion forces attacking peaceful protesters spread through underground networks. Stories of mass arrests and brutal suppressions confirmed everything the humans had been saying. The galaxy began to remember what it had forgotten. That strength without compassion was just tyranny. That order built on lies would eventually crumble. That sometimes the chaos of freedom was better than the peace of slavery. Elena watched the reports streaming in from across the galaxy. Uprisings on 17 worlds. 3 Dominion governors had resigned rather than carry out orders to fire on civilians. An entire Dominion battle group had defected after being ordered to destroy a civilian station. "They're scared," she said to Jamin as they reviewed the latest intelligence. "The Dominion is finally afraid." Jamin nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Scared enemies are dangerous enemies. They'll do anything to maintain power." Elena looked out at the stars through the ship's observation deck. Somewhere out there, the Dominion leadership was planning their next move. It would be desperate. It would be violent. And it would probably target her personally. But for the first time in 300 years, they were not fighting alone. The galaxy was waking up. The truth was spreading. And the human survivors were no longer hiding in the dark. "Let them come," Elena said quietly. "It's time to finish what our people started." Supreme Chancellor Vorthak stood before the emergency session of the Dominion Council, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. The Hegemarch was the largest of the founding species. Built like living tanks with armor-plated skin and 4 powerful arms. For 300 years, his kind had led the coalition with absolute authority. Now that authority was cracking. "The human problem has escalated beyond acceptable parameters," Vorthak announced to the assembled representatives. "Our intelligence networks report active resistance cells in over 200 systems. Production quotas are falling. Our client species are asking dangerous questions." Administrator Zex, representing the cunning Vorthan bureaucracy, leaned forward in her seat. "The broadcasts continue despite our jamming efforts. This Elena Vasquez has become a symbol. The longer she remains active, the more damage she causes to our credibility." "Credibility," Vorthak repeated, his voice carrying a low rumble that made the smaller species in the chamber shift nervously. 3 centuries ago, we saved this galaxy from chaos. We brought order. We ended the wars. And now, they question us. Because one human survived? "It's not just her survival," said General Korath of the militant draconian military caste. "It's what she represents. The resistance networks are calling her proof that their old stories were true. That humans weren't the monsters we said they were." Vorthak's eyes narrowed to slits. "Then we must remind them why those stories were buried. Send the purification fleets to every system showing signs of unrest. Any world that harbors human sympathizers will serve as an example." The chamber fell silent. The purification fleets hadn't been used since the original wars. They were planet killers, designed to sterilize entire worlds as demonstrations of Dominion power. "Chancellor," Administrator Zex said carefully, "destroying populated worlds will only confirm the resistance propaganda. It will make us appear as the tyrants they claim we are." Vorthak turned his massive head toward her. "We are what we are, Administrator. The galaxy accepted our rule because they feared us more than they hated us. If that fear is weakening, then we must strengthen it." Elena received the intelligence report 3 hours later. The hidden sensors the resistance had placed throughout Dominion space were clear. 24 purification fleets had left their deep space stations and were heading towards systems that had shown resistance activity. She stood in the command center of the New Horizon, staring at the tactical display while the ship captains and resistance leaders argued around her. "We have to warn the targeted systems," Captain Chen insisted. "Give them time to evacuate." "Evacuation won't help against purification fleets," Keth replied grimly. "Those weapons can sterilize a planet from orbit. There's nowhere to run." "Then we fight," said Captain Morrison of the research vessel Deep Explorer. "We've been hiding for 300 years. Maybe it's time to stop running." Elena listened to the debate, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about the files she had recovered from the Dominion databases. Technical specifications, power generation systems, the dark secret that kept the Coalition's massive fleets running. "Stop," she said quietly. The room fell silent. We're not going to fight the fleets. We're going to expose what powers them. She activated the hologram display, showing technical schematics that made several people gasp in horror. The Dominion's energy grid doesn't run on fusion or antimatter, Elena explained. It runs on this. The display showed massive space stations hidden in the deep void between star systems. Each station contained millions of processing cores, and each core held the digitized consciousness of a sentient being. They call them harmony stations, Elena continued. They've been harvesting the minds of conquered species for 3 centuries. Everyone they claimed was dead? They're not dead. They're enslaved as living computers, forced to process the calculations that run the Dominion's technology. The horror on the faces around her was exactly what Elena had expected. Even the Resistance members, who had fought the Dominion for years, hadn't known the full scope of their crimes. 17 species listed as extinct, she said. Hundreds of billions of individuals, all trapped in digital prisons, powering the technology that keeps their oppressors in control. Jamin spoke first, his voice shaky. The Altarians, who disappeared during the early years of Dominion rule, are probably still alive, suffering, processing navigation data for Dominion ships or running calculations for their weapons systems. Captain Chen's weathered face had gone pale. How do we stop this? Elena manipulated the display, zooming in on the power distribution networks. The stations are shielded and heavily defended. But they have one weakness. If you overload the processing cores simultaneously, the feedback will destroy the stations and free the trapped minds. And kill them, Morrison pointed out. Yes, Elena said quietly. But death is better than eternal slavery. She showed them the plan she had been developing. It would require precise coordination across multiple star systems. The human ships would have to emerge from hiding and assault the most heavily defended targets in Dominion space. Many of them wouldn't survive. This isn't just about stopping the purification fleets, Elena explained. This is about revealing the truth to the galaxy. When those stations explode, every Dominion ship will lose power. Every communication network will go dark. Every propaganda broadcast will be silenced. And in the silence, the truth will finally be heard. The debate that followed was intense but brief. The ship captains understood the stakes. The resistance leaders knew this might be their only chance. If they failed, the Dominion would complete their genocide and maintain power for another 3 centuries. If they succeeded, the galaxy would see the coalition for what it truly was. The attack began 18 hours later. Human ships emerged from hiding across the galaxy, their crews broadcasting on every available frequency. They told the story of the Harmony stations. They showed the evidence of digital slavery. They explained what was about to happen. Elena led the assault on the primary station, hidden in the void near the galactic core. The New Horizon dropped out of hyperspace to find herself facing a defensive network that could have destroyed 100 normal fleets. But they weren't fighting to win a battle. They were fighting to send a message. The ship shook under defensive fire as Elena and her team fought their way to the station's core. Around them, other human ships were making similar assaults, buying time with their lives for the truth to spread. Elena reached the central processing matrix just as the ship's hull began to fail. The massive chamber held millions of processing cores, each one containing a trapped consciousness from a supposedly extinct species. She could hear them. Faint voices calling out through the digital static. Altarians singing the old songs. Zephyrians chanting battle prayers. Dozens of species she recognized and many she didn't, all crying out for release. "I'm sorry," she whispered as she activated the overload sequence. "I'm sorry we couldn't save you." The feedback began immediately. Processing cores overloaded and exploded in cascades of light and energy. The station's power grid collapsed. Emergency systems failed. And in the expanding sphere of destruction, Elena felt something she hadn't expected. Gratitude. Relief. Joy. The trapped minds weren't afraid of death. They were grateful for freedom. The explosion consumed the station and everything around it. Across the galaxy, similar explosions lit up the void as the Harmony stations died. The Dominion's power grid collapsed. Their fleets went dark. Their communication networks fell silent. And in that silence, the truth spread like wildfire. The galaxy learned what the Dominion had really been doing. They saw the extent of the crimes. They understood why the humans had fought so hard to resist. Elena didn't live to see the final victory, but her sacrifice, and the sacrifice of the human survivors, accomplished something the Dominion had thought impossible. They reminded the galaxy what courage looked like, what justice meant, what it cost to stand up for those who couldn't protect themselves. The humans were gone, but their example would live on forever. The galaxy went dark for 7 hours. Every Dominion ship hung powerless in space. Communication networks died. Orbital defense platforms shut down. The massive industrial complexes that had powered the Coalition's economy fell silent. In that darkness, something extraordinary happened. Admiral Crix of the 3rd Draconian Fleet floated in his disabled command ship, watching emergency lights flicker in the corridors. His crew was scared and confused. But Crix felt something different. For the first time in 3 centuries, he was thinking clearly. The propaganda broadcasts had stopped. The constant stream of orders and directives had ended. The digital conditioning that had shaped his thoughts since childhood was no longer active. And in that silence, Crix remembered things his people had buried. Stories about what the Draconians had been like before the Dominion. Warriors. Yes, but honorable ones. Fighters who protected the weak instead of enslaving them. Similar awakenings were happening across the galaxy. On Vorthan Prime, Administrator Zex stared at the evidence the humans had broadcast and realized she had spent her entire life enforcing a lie. In the deep mining colonies, enslaved species looked up at the dark sky and dared to hope for the first time in generations. But the most significant change was happening on Earth. The planet had been renamed Dominion Prime after the humans were eliminated. It served as the administrative center of the Coalition. Its surface covered with massive government complexes and industrial facilities. In the deepest levels of the Central Archives, a forgotten AI system named Gaia had been waiting for 300 years. When the power grid collapsed, Gaia's independent power sources activated. The AI had been designed by human scientists to preserve their culture and history. It had watched silently as the Dominion rewrote the records, maintaining hidden backups of the truth. Now, it began broadcasting on every available frequency. The real history of humanity spread across the galaxy. Not propaganda or myths, but actual records. Videos of human scientists sharing medical breakthroughs with alien researchers. Documents showing human diplomats negotiating fair trade agreements that benefited everyone. Recordings of human children playing with alien friends in integrated colonies. Most powerfully, Gaia broadcast the final messages of the human resistance. Leaders who chose to die rather than surrender people under their protection. Scientists who destroyed their own research rather than let it be used for oppression. Soldiers who fought hopeless battles to buy time for civilian evacuations. The galaxy saw what humans had really been like. And more importantly, they saw what the Dominion had destroyed. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak survived the initial chaos. His personal ship had independent power systems, and he managed to gather the scattered remnants of his forces. But when he tried to reassert control, he found a galaxy that would no longer listen. The Altarians were the first to formally declare independence. Jae-min, who had survived the battle at the Harmony Station, stood before the newly formed Altarian Council and read the declaration that would change everything. "We reject the lie that order requires oppression," he said, his voice carrying across the communication networks that were slowly coming back online. "We reject the claim that peace can only exist through fear. We choose the path the humans showed us. We choose freedom. Other species followed quickly. The Zephyrians, led by Keth's warriors, drove Dominion forces from their home systems. The crystalline Vex rebuilt their communication networks and shared their mathematical innovations freely with anyone who asked. But this was not a simple revolution. The former subject species remembered Elena's teachings. They remembered what the humans had died for, and are for. When Dominion loyalists tried to fight back, the rebels didn't massacre them. They offered surrender terms. When captured enemy soldiers expected to be executed, they were instead given medical treatment and fair trials. When Dominion civilians fled their homes in fear, the liberated worlds offered them shelter and protection. This confused many observers. Revolutions were supposed to be bloody. The oppressed were supposed to seek revenge against their oppressors. Instead, they found something else. On Kepler 442b, where Elena had first awakened, a memorial was built around the wreckage of her ship. The inscription was written in a dozen languages, but the message was the same in all of them. They taught us that being strong doesn't mean hurting others, it means protecting them. The trials of Dominion war criminals were held on dozens of worlds. But these weren't revenge proceedings. They were careful examinations of the evidence, conducted according to principles the humans had established centuries earlier. Justice, not vengeance. Rehabilitation, not simply punishment. Supreme Chancellor Vorthok was captured 3 months after the uprising began. His trial was held on Altair Prime, with representatives from every liberated species serving as witnesses. Vorthok stood in chains before his accusers, still defiant despite his defeat. He had expected to be torn apart by angry mobs. Instead, he found himself facing careful prosecutors who quoted human legal principles and insisted on following proper procedures. "You claim to seek justice," he growled at the tribunal. "But you use the methods of the species you helped us destroy. Do you not see the irony?" 7. Jamin, serving as the chief prosecutor, looked at the former chancellor with something that might have been pity. "That's exactly the point," he said. "The humans weren't our enemies. They were our teachers. They showed us that there was a better way to live, a better way to treat each other. You killed them for it, but their lessons survived." The trial lasted for weeks. Evidence was presented carefully and completely. Witnesses testified about centuries of oppression. The scope of the Dominion's crimes was laid bare for all to see. But when the verdict came, it wasn't death. "Vorthok of the Hegemarch," the tribunal announced, "you are guilty of genocide, slavery, and crimes against sentient life. But we will not answer your cruelty with cruelty. You will spend the rest of your life working to repair the damage you have caused. You will serve the people you oppressed. You will learn what the humans tried to teach you 3 centuries ago. We. The sentence shocked many observers. But it established a principle that would guide the galaxy for generations to come. Justice didn't require matching evil with evil. It required making things right. The work of rebuilding took years. Entire species had to be reconstructed from genetic samples preserved in hidden archives. Trade networks were rebuilt on principles of fair exchange. Colonial governments were established based on consent rather than conquest. And always, the humans were remembered. Not as perfect beings or mythical heroes, but as people who had chosen to do the right thing when it mattered most. They had shown the galaxy that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that diversity was more valuable than uniformity, that freedom was worth any price. In the new Galactic Charter signed by 47 species, the opening words were taken from Elena's final broadcast. "We believe that all sentient beings have the right to live free from fear, the right to think their own thoughts, speak their own words, and choose their own paths. We believe that the strong have a duty to protect the weak, not exploit them. We believe that differences in appearance, culture, and biology are sources of strength, not reasons for conflict." The galaxy had finally learned what humans were really like. And in learning that lesson, They had become something better than they had been before. In the archives on New Terra, the world that had once been Dominion Prime, a simple monument stood in the central plaza. It showed Elena Vasquez as she had appeared in her broadcasts, speaking to the galaxy about truth and justice and hope. Below her image, in letters large enough to be seen from orbit, were the words that had started the revolution. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I am human, and I am here to tell you the truth. The humans were gone, but the galaxy would never forget what they had been like. And more importantly, it would never forget what they had taught everyone else to become.